While Nike struggled with declining market share, New Balance quietly achieved something remarkable: a 50% revenue growth in their footwear segment from $4.4 billion to $6.6 billion between 2022 and 2024. Most people think Nike's dominance is unshakable, but New Balance just proved them wrong using tactics that completely flip conventional marketing wisdom on its head. Here's the counterintuitive strategy that turned their biggest weakness, being seen as the dad shoe brand, into their secret weapon against the industry giants. Think about this for a moment. When your brand is known for being worn by chubby white guys in their late 30s, most companies would flee from that image. New Balance did the opposite. They leaned into it so hard that it became their competitive advantage. New Balance's identity stems from its roots. Founded in 1906 as an arch support company, New Balance has evolved into a renowned global brand that prioritizes comfort and advanced footwear technology, naturally attracting middle-aged wearers. The famous patrons being figures like Steve Jobs in his gray 992s and Larry David. This cemented the dad shoe aesthetic, particularly around the 990 series. Instead of trying to distance themselves, they created one of the most brilliant campaigns in marketing history. The tagline read, "Worn by supermodels in London and dads in Ohio." That single line captured an authentic duality that Nike never could achieve and perfectly timed it with the broader dad shoe trend emerging around 2018. Here's the powerful psychology. In today's market, authenticity beats aspiration every single time. New Balance said, "We celebrate who you actually are." That authenticity resonated deeply with a generation wary of manufactured hype. The data backs this up. Their self-aware approach differentiated them so effectively that they carved out an entirely new market segment. While Nike battled for the same customer everyone else wanted, New Balance created customers who specifically chose them because they weren't trying to be Nike. They proved that the best way to win isn't by beating your competitors at their own game. Sometimes you win by changing the rules entirely. The dad shoe pivot was brilliant, but it was enabled by something far deeper than a single marketing campaign. New Balance has a structural financial advantage no public company can replicate. So, how did their private ownership give them the patience to play a completely different game? Here's where New Balance's story gets really interesting. While Nike and Adidas answer to shareholders every quarter, New Balance operates under completely different rules. They're privately held by billionaire chairman Jim Davis, and that single fact changed everything about how they could compete. This private structure allowed for the kind of long-term vision and radical investment most public companies would never attempt. A perfect example of this is their commitment to owning and operating their made factories in the United States and the UK, prioritizing premium quality and heritage positioning over short-term production cost savings. This patient philosophy was fully embraced by leaders like Chris Davis, who joined New Balance in 2011 and became the chief marketing officer in 2020. Davis understood that brand building takes years, not quarters. While competitors focused on 2 to 3 year plans, New Balance was making 6 to 10-year business plans, a structural luxury only private ownership affords. New Balance even hard-coded this patience into their budget. They follow a simple 50-30-20 rule. Half of the money goes into proven tactics that guarantee sales, 30% funds bold but calculated risks, and 20% is reserved for pure experimentation, projects expected to fail but designed to teach. That last slice is what fueled their most surprising wins. From unlikely athlete signings to fashion collaborations that turned into cultural moments years later. Chris Davis perfectly articulated this strategic shift away from a short-term, sales-driven focus, summarizing it as the choice between horizontal, brand-wide, and vertical, product-specific marketing. As he stated, I firmly believe that the vertical component of marketing can only be relevant if the horizontal strength, uplifting the entirety of the brand, is also strong. New Balance committed to spending the time and money to build the horizontal strength first, the brand's total cultural relevance and authenticity, allowing the vertical, sales-driven component to become exponentially more effective later. That patience is exactly how they built the foundation necessary to crush their publicly traded rivals. This long-term patience didn't just prevent mistakes, it cleared the runway for massive, calculated cultural risks. Let's look at the tactics within that marketing strategy. The hyper-selective partnerships that were silently repositioning the brand as a luxury player. Now, here's where New Balance's strategy gets absolutely brilliant. While Nike was spending billions on traditional advertising, New Balance was quietly infiltrating culture through the back door. They understood something that most brands miss completely. You don't buy cultural relevance, you earn it through authentic partnerships and strategic timing. Let's start with their collaboration strategy. Instead of going after obvious partnerships, New Balance chose collaborators that made people think. They strategically partnered with Palace in skateboarding, Levi's in heritage denim, and Action Bronson in music/street culture. These weren't random choices. Each partnership reinforced their core identity while reaching new, influential niche audiences. The genius was in the timing and scarcity, particularly with high-fashion brands. Take their sustained alliance with Stone Island since 2021. This wasn't a logo slap. It was a fusion of design and material innovation. The collaborations featured experimental textiles and reimagined classics like the 574 and 998, instantly elevating New Balance into luxury streetwear. Releases were limited and exclusive, reinforcing rarity and desirability. The product hype went beyond immediate sales and partnerships. New Balance leveraged its heritage to create entirely new, desirable aesthetics. The 2002 R line, especially the Protection Pack, became an instant outlier success due to its deconstructed, pre-distressed design. Similarly, the 9060 model, with its chunky, futuristic meets retro Y2K silhouette, generated hype by aligning with bold, experimental aesthetics favored by fashion-forward consumers. And it wasn't just about outside partners. New Balance also invested in bringing the right creative minds inside the brand. Teddy Santis, founder of Aimé Leon Dore, was appointed creative director of the Made in USA line in 2021, giving their heritage silhouettes a fresh, fashion-forward perspective. At the same time, designers like Salehe Bembury reimagined iconic models with bold textures and experimental concepts, turning them into instant collector pieces. By putting credible tastemakers behind the product, New Balance ensured that the design language stayed culturally relevant, not just nostalgic. Their athlete strategy also became a stealth weapon. Instead of paying established superstars massive contracts, New Balance identified rising talent early: Cooper Flagg, Coco Gauff, and Shohei Ohtani. This two-pronged approach, high fashion credibility on one side and authentic, emerging performance talent on the other, allowed the brand to simultaneously build credibility in streetwear and core athletics. This strategic approach created something Nike struggles with despite all their resources: organic social amplification. When New Balance drops something limited, people aren't just buying it, they're posting about it, demonstrating their insider cultural knowledge. They were winning by playing a completely different game based on depth over breadth. These collaborations built the horizontal strength of the brand, but that still leaves a crucial question. How did this calculated hype translate into real-world market share, specifically with the one demographic that determines the future of the sneaker market, Gen Z? Here's where New Balance's strategy created something remarkable. They didn't just appeal to Gen Z, they became Gen Z's authentic choice in a market flooded with brands trying too hard to be cool. The shift happened because Gen Z is actively rejecting the overtly hyped, uncomfortable models that dominated previous trends, like the Nike Dunk, Air Jordan 1, and Air Force 1. Instead, they prioritize comfort, versatility, and authenticity. New Balance was perfectly positioned for this market correction. Innovation, quality, competitiveness, and identity. The return of retro running and trends from the 2000s have further boosted the brand's momentum. Chunky retro futuristic silhouettes like the 9060 perfectly match Gen Z's appetite for bold, nostalgic, early 2000s inspired fashion. Beyond comfort and style, New Balance has consistently framed its sneakers as pieces of technology, a positioning they adopted long before techwear became mainstream. Their runners weren't just marketed as shoes, but as engineered systems built with NCAP, Absorb, and Stability Web technologies, language that resonated with a generation that sees sneakers as performance tools as much as fashion statements. Another overlooked factor was price positioning. While Nike and Yeezy pairs were climbing well above the $150 to $200 range, New Balance kept most of their new icons between $120 and $170. This hit the perfect balance, accessible enough for students and young professionals, yet premium enough to feel like a step up from fast fashion sneakers. And crucially, New Balance proved they could anticipate cultural shifts instead of chasing them. The 1906L, a hybrid loafer sneaker, became a runaway success by blending formal aesthetics with everyday wearability, perfectly timed for a Gen Z audience experimenting with fluid dress codes. Moves like this showed that New Balance wasn't just reacting to trends, but often setting them. The result? These models didn't just trend, they became everyday staples. New Balance's historically understated marketing felt genuine to a generation wary of manufactured commercialism, and their dad shoe heritage evolved into a badge of retro cool. The purchasing behavior data reveals this wasn't just a style fad, it was a full market share reallocation. Gen Z wasn't tricked into hype. They actively chose a brand whose values of quality, heritage, and comfort matched their own. That combination of cultural alignment, technological credibility, and trend anticipation is an edge Nike can't simply buy back. New Balance didn't just beat Nike at selling sneakers, they redefined what winning looks like. While the giants were chasing quarterly numbers and short-term hype, New Balance played the decade-long game, slow, patient, fearlessly independent. The brand turned a so-called weakness, the dad shoe, into a cultural flex that built factories instead of outsourcing, and that created credibility through timing and authenticity, not billion-dollar ad campaigns. The lesson is simple. When you stop trying to copy the playbook of your competitors and start writing your own, you don't just survive. You change the rules of the entire industry. If you enjoyed this breakdown and want more deep dives into the hidden strategies of the world's biggest brands, make sure to subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.